Schools with Tommy Castro Backup Plan. 101.9 DAWG FM, 9:39 the time on a Wednesday morning. It is a pleasure. It is an honor. It is a real treat right now to have a legend on the radio with us this morning. He's been in broadcasting for over 60 years. One of the most famous faces on the television as well. And, well, here he is, Lloyd Robertson. Good morning.
Good morning, Dylan. Thank you for inviting me.
This is so cool to have you on the air now. You say you're retired. I don't think you're retired, Lloyd. You're not even close to retired. You're doing
well,
more.
That's quite true.
You're doing more work retired than any normal person does throughout their whole career, it seems. The new book, W5. Can we go back in time just a bit here, though, Lloyd? Can we? You don't mind, do you?
Sure.
You began your career, it's 61 years, I guess, you're celebrating this year.
Yes, well, actually, I started out full-time at the radio station in Stratford in 1952. So that was Monday to Friday. Before that, I had been an operator on the board, rolling records, the old 45 RPMs, and the 78s in those days, too, for announcers. And then I gradually worked to on-air work, because in those days, there were no schools to teach you anything other than one in Toronto, the Ryerson Radio Arts course. But other than that, there was nothing. So you learned by doing, which I still think is really the best way. But I think now to just get in, you have to have a piece of paper of some kind. Mm-hmm. And then I moved on from there to Guelph in private radio, and then to Windsor with the CBC, and then broke into television in Winnipeg in 1956.
Mm-hmm. But you spent some time as the anchor right here in CBC Ottawa.
Yes, I did. I was there in 1960. And that's where I really got my foot in the water politically, because I was able to get up on the hill quite a bit. John Diefenbaker was in power while I was there. And I met him. I interviewed Lester Pearson a few years later. And I did the local news there for a couple of years. I did a few local election broadcasts, and I was a very busy guy in Ottawa. We also had a show in those days called Diplomatic Passport, which was really an interview show with all of the ambassadors and high commissioners who were in Ottawa at the time. That was fascinating, and that really got me interested in the world and where these people came from, what kind of countries they lived in, what the conditions were like there. It was all fascinating material for me, and I really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. I also, by the way, just to show that I wasn't limited in range in those days, I also did a show called Football Huddle with Russ Jackson and the Ottawa Rough Riders.
Wow. Okay, well, all these years, I mean, watching the world as closely as you have, I mean, how has it changed? What would you say is the biggest difference these days?
Oh, well, I think there are many, many different changes in our business, of course. If you go back, we in those days, in television in the late 50s and early 60s, everything was black and white. Then came color. Then came videotape. I think videotape actually came first, and then satellites. And the ability to flash around the world instantly is the biggest positive, I think, in recent times. Because when I started, we had to wait for film to be cut, and in the case of overseas stories, be delivered. Indeed, most of the material that we would show on a day from foreign news would be a day late. So you can imagine the difference in terms of speed and timeliness now and then. The world itself, well, mainly, I think in terms of this country, and what I saw, I had the privilege of covering Canada through 1967, through Centennial year, and in that case, the country really grew up. I think, as Pierre Burton said at the time, 1967 was the story of the country falling in love with itself. And I think Canada changed during that time. We had the new flag by then, of course, the new maple leaf, and we really began to develop a degree of patriotism that I'd never seen before. Mm-hmm. And we are not blatant and loud in our patriotism. We're quiet in it as Canadians, but I think we are more firmly dedicated to the country since 1967 than we have been ever before.
Mm-hmm. And now, of all the people that you got to interview throughout the years, was there anybody ever on the list that you never got a chance to talk to that you would have loved to have?
Well, the one person I would like to have interviewed and never got a chance was Nelson Mandela, and I don't think I'll get to it now because he's ailing and very poor health. Mm-hmm. But he was in Canada back in the 90s, and he was only in Toronto for a day. So I tried, but I didn't make it. And that's the one regret I have. The one when people ask who is the most memorable, to me, that's always the first long interview I did with the Prime Minister, and that was supposed to be Pearson in 1967. And I remember that quite distinctly because he was so easygoing. He came in with his jacket thrown over his shoulder, and he said to me, "How's your rotten management, Lloyd?" And I was taken aback by that, of course. I was working at the CBC at the time. And what he was referring to was Julie DeMarsh's comment, his heritage minister, about the way the CBC had handled the cancellation of a program called 7 Days, which was a very popular public affairs show on Sunday nights at that time. And we sat down after that, and we had a great interview. He was candid, and I always thought of him as someone who moved beyond the often partisan bickering that takes place every day in politics. He was a wise man, and I think he had a broader view of life and the world.
And now I guess all these stories, all these interviews, behind-the-scenes stuff, it can all be found in the new book you've written.
The Kind of Life It's Been. Yes, actually, it's a narrative. It's a personal memoir, Dylan. It's a sort of narrative of my life from the beginning straight through to the year I left the news, 2011. And I said, I'm not really pulling. I'm pulling the anchor, but I'm not docking the boat. If you know what I mean. I'm still going to be around, so I've continued working since I did. But yes, it covers that period of time from my start in Stratford, my family situation, which was not a happy one in the early years, quite bleak, in fact, before I got involved in broadcasting, and through the early years in television, and some of that is really fun and interesting. There's a lot of fun in the book because I look back on my career and I think, boy, have I been lucky. I was able to be involved in something I appreciated and had a lot of fun with, and I can't think of anything else I would rather have been involved in all those years. And it carries through to the interviews with the various prime ministers, the reference to the JFK assassination. I go at some length on 9/11 and the Terry Fox story. So those kinds of things, which I think people who lived through that era will appreciate, and others can catch up on it.
Well, you're hosting W5, another episode this Saturday at 7, and so you're still, of course, the man when it comes to that program. But all these years, and you did the anchoring and the national news. I mean, what's the one thing you miss?
Well, I think I miss going in every day and seeing my buddies in the newsroom, because that was a daily ritual for me for 35 years at CTV and 41 if you include my CBC time from 1970 to 76. But I am around there. I'm in and out with W5. We have a program coming up next week on a story that was current last year out in Saskatchewan. And we're looking into the anatomy of a murder, really. The terrible story where a young man, a jealous boyfriend, rammed into a car carrying his girlfriend and 3 other innocents, and he got out and shot everybody dead. And we talked to, well, not everybody, there's one survivor. We talked to the one survivor, and it's quite a fascinating story. And we asked that question, which everybody asks, and we try to get it answered when this kind of thing happens, is what made him do it? Because this is usually angry young men. So that's on next Saturday, February 16th. They're called Countdown to Murder. So I'm busy with that. Yes, I believe that if I enjoy broadcasting, I intend to stay in it as long as I can still do it.
Well, we're happy to hear that. Do you miss saying that's the kind of day it's been as much as you did in the past? Do you miss it?
Well, I have to say that I don't miss being there at 11 o'clock every night.
Yeah, I guess not.
The little catchphrase, I never dreamed it would catch on the way it did, because that came about simply because we were trying to identify our newscast as being the final word of the day that is different from everybody else, because people can get news any time of the day or night now through the 24-hour channels or through the internet. So we felt, okay, how are we different? What's distinctive about us? So in putting that tag on, we were saying to people, which is the kind of program we put together, this is what you would want to have known about today. And then we had some add-ons, like features on medical news and that kind of thing. So we covered the waterfront at 11 o'clock and left people feeling, that they had what they needed to know for any given day of the year. And when I trotted that out, just sort of tried it one night, people said to me, that's kind of catchy. Why don't you stick with that for a while? So I did. And then in the year 2000, I stopped doing it just because I thought, new century, I'll change and try something else.
Yeah.
Right away, there were phone calls and people saying to me, please put it back on. We liked it. And finally, when the program director called me and said, hey, listen, people are writing about that. If I were you, I'd slide it back. And so I slid it back in, never having acknowledged that I'd take it out in the first place. And those who noticed were happy that it had come back, and the ones who didn't notice never bothered anyway. So it worked, and I'm happy about that. There's a little story on that phrase in the book as well, and how it came to be.
That's cool. Well, I'm wrapping up my show here this morning, so it'd be awesome if I had a Lloyd Robertson mention maybe here at the end. Like, that's the kind of day it's been on the Dawg's Breakfast.
That's the kind of day it's been on the Dawn's Breakfast, February 6th.
That's so cool. All right, the new book, it's That's the Kind of Life It's Been. Of course, you're on W5 again this weekend. Lloyd Robertson, man, this has been so cool. Real honor for me as a broadcaster myself to talk to you, and never get off that TV, man. We love seeing you on there.
Dylan, thank you very, very much. Good luck to you in your career, and best wishes to all of your listeners. It's been a pleasure.
Paying our dues and rocking the blues. 101.9 DAWG FM.